Peter's voice trembled as he held onto Vanessa's arm, his fingers stained with cement and years of hard labor. "Vanessa, please don't leave me," he pleaded, his knees weak from fear and desperation. "I may be poor today, but I will work harder. I will change things. Just think about our child. She needs you. We need you." His eyes were filled with tears, the kind that come from a man who has given everything and still feels it is not enough. Vanessa pulled her hand away sharply, her face filled with anger and disgust. "Get your hands off me," she snapped. "I am tired of this life. I am tired of being married to a man who smells of cement and failure." Her words cut deeper than any blade. "I have found someone better. Someone rich. Someone who knows how to treat a woman like a queen." Without looking back, she turned and walked away, leaving behind a broken home she once called her own. This is the story of Vanessa and Peter, who left her husband for a richer man. There was a time when life was peaceful. Peter worked as a bricklayer at a small factory on the edge of town. Every morning, he woke up early, tied his warm boots, and went to work with pride. The factory was dusty, filled with the smell of cement, but it was honest work. He earned little, but enough to feed his family and keep his daughter in school. Vanessa used to be different. She would wake early, prepare meals, and help their daughter Ruth get ready for school. Their house was small, but it was filled with laughter and warmth. They did not have luxury, but they had peace. At least, that was how it used to be before comparison and desire slowly entered Vanessa's heart. Vanessa owns a fruit shop. She goes there after dropping Ruth to school. Vanessa's fruit shop stood by the roadside, where expensive cars often passed. She would watch them silently, her eyes following the smooth movement of wealth she did not have. One day, a handsome young man named Samuel stopped by her store. He spoke gently, smiled confidently. He bought fruits and left behind more than just money. He left behind a dangerous thought. After he left, Vanessa looked down at her worn slippers and faded clothes. Something bitter began to grow inside her. That evening, she looked at Peter with frustration. "Why can't you be like other men?" she demanded. "Why are we still suffering after all these years?" Her voice carried pain, but also growing pride and dissatisfaction. Little Ruth, only 6 years old, sat quietly in the corner, listening to her parents argue. Her small heart could not understand everything, but she understood enough to feel the tension. "Mama, we are okay," she said softly. "Papa is trying." Her innocent words carried wisdom beyond her years. But Vanessa waved her off. "You don't understand," she replied coldly. "You are too young to know what suffering is." Peter remained silent, his head lowered. He had no answers left, only hope. But hope was something Vanessa had already begun to lose. Days passed and Samuel the rich man returned one afternoon, this time in a shining white car that drew attention from everyone nearby. He called out to Vanessa with a confident smile. He asked Vanessa if she was married. She hesitated and said yes. Samuel replied and said, "A woman like you should not be suffering," he said smoothly. "You deserve a better life." Vanessa felt her heart race. No one had spoken to her like that in years. When he handed her his card and told her to call him if she wanted a different life, she hesitated, but only for a moment. "I will call," she said quietly, and in that moment, her path began to change forever. That evening, Vanessa was quiet and distant. Peter noticed immediately. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded quickly, avoiding his eyes. But inside her mind, thoughts of wealth, comfort, and escape filled every corner. The next day, she told Peter, "I am going to visit a friend," she said. He asked if he can go with her, but Vanessa said quickly, "No, it's just ladies' meeting." Peter trusted her without question. That trust would soon become the very thing that broke him. Samuel welcomed Vanessa into a world she had only imagined. He took her shopping, bought her expensive clothes, and treated her with attention she had longed for. For the first time in years, she felt seen, admired, and desired. By the end of the day, he handed her money, more than Peter could earn in months. Vanessa held it tightly, her heart beating fast. She knew this was wrong, but the comfort it brought was louder than her conscience. When Vanessa returned home late that night, Peter was waiting. His face was filled with worry. "Where have you been?" he asked. But she brushed past him, her new perfume filling the air like a silent confession. Even little Ruth noticed the change. "Mama, where did you go?" she asked. Vanessa snapped at her, sending her back to bed. It was the first time she spoke to her child with such coldness, and it marked the beginning of a painful transformation. Days turned into weeks, and Vanessa became a stranger in her own home. She stopped cooking, stopped caring, and stopped being present. She came home late, sometimes not at all. Peter tried to hold everything together. He cooked, cleaned, and cared for Ruth. But the burden was heavy, and the silence left by Vanessa's absence was even heavier. Their home was no longer filled with laughter, it was filled with waiting. One morning, Vanessa returned in a car that did not belong to their world. She stepped out dressed like a stranger, her appearance drawing the attention of every neighbor. Peter knew what was coming before she spoke. "I am leaving," she said boldly. "I have found someone better." Peter fell to his knees, begging her to stay. Little Ruth cried and held on to her mother's dress. But Vanessa's heart had already left long ago. She got into the car and drove away, leaving behind a husband in tears and a child in pain. The day Vanessa left, silence settled heavily over the house. Peter sat on the floor for hours, unable to move, while little Ruth cried herself to sleep beside him. The walls that once held laughter now echoed with absence. But life did not stop. The next morning, Peter woke up before sunrise, wiped his tears, and stepped into a role he had never prepared for, both father and mother. He carried Ruth on his old bicycle and began the long journey to her school. The road was dusty, and people along the way whispered and laughed. "That is the man whose wife ran away," they said. Peter heard every word, but he kept moving. "Don't mind them," he told his daughter softly. "One day, things will change." Peter's life became a daily battle. He woke up at dawn, prepared simple meals, dressed Ruth for school, and then walked under the harsh sun making bricks. His hands grew rougher, his body weaker, but his determination only grew stronger. He refused to let his daughter suffer because of her mother's choice. There were days when food was scarce. Sometimes, Peter would pretend he was not hungry so Ruth could eat. He wore the same clothes for years, but made sure his daughter had clean uniforms and books. "Education is your key," he always told her. "It will open doors no one can close." At just 6 years old, Ruth began to understand the weight her father carried. She stopped asking for things she knew he could not afford. Instead, she helped in every way she could. She cleaned the house, washed dishes, and arranged her father's tools when he returned from work. At school, Ruth was quiet but focused. She studied hard, remembering her father's words. While other children played freely, she carried a silent determination. She had seen pain too early in life, and it shaped her into someone stronger than her years. Time passed, and Ruth grew into a brilliant young girl. Her teachers noticed her intelligence and discipline. She became one of the best students in her class, earning praise and small scholarships that helped ease her father's burden. Peter watched his daughter with pride. Though his life was still difficult, he found joy in her success. Every report card she brought home felt like a reward for his sacrifices. "You are my blessing," he would say, his eyes filled with quiet happiness. As Ruth grew older, she made a decision that would change everything. She wanted to become a doctor. She wanted to heal people, to give hope, just like her father had given her strength when she needed it most. The journey was not easy. There were nights she studied without light, using a small lamp when electricity failed. There were days she walked long distances to attend extra lessons. But she never gave up. Her father's struggle had become her motivation. 15 years later, Ruth stood tall in a white coat. She had achieved what once seemed impossible. She became a doctor, working in one of the biggest hospitals in town. The same town where people once laughed at her and her father. Peter sat proudly at her graduation, tears in his eyes. "You have changed our story," he said. For the first time in many years, life felt different, not easy, but hopeful, dignified, and full of purpose. While Ruth was rising, Vanessa's world was slowly collapsing. Samuel, the man she trusted, had his own plans. Without warning, he sold the house, took his wealth, and left the country to join his family abroad. Vanessa was left with nothing. The new owner gave her only 2 days to leave. She packed her belongings into a small suitcase, her hands shaking. The luxury life she chased had disappeared like smoke, leaving her alone and broken. Vanessa moved into a small, quiet house at the edge of town. It was far from the life she once enjoyed. The silence around her was heavy, filled with memories she could not escape. For the first time, she began to think of Peter and Ruth. She remembered their love, their patience, and the home she had destroyed. Regret grew inside her, stronger each day. But regret, she soon realized, could not change the past. One afternoon, Vanessa suddenly fell ill. Her body weak, her strength gone, she collapsed in her small room. Neighbors rushed her to the hospital, unaware of her past, unaware of the story she carried. She lay on the hospital bed, helpless and afraid. Life had brought her back to the very place where her fate would meet the people she once abandoned. When the call came into the hospital, Ruth responded immediately. As a doctor, it was her duty. She walked quickly into the room, ready to save a life. But the moment she saw the patient, her steps froze. It was her mother. The woman who had left her. The woman who had chosen wealth over family. Ruth's heart tightened with pain and anger. Without saying a word, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving the past standing in front of her. Back in her office, Ruth struggled to breathe. The memories came rushing back, the crying, the loneliness, the shame. A nurse followed her, asking what was wrong, but Ruth could not speak. That night, she told her father everything. Peter listened quietly, his face calm but thoughtful. He did not interrupt. He understood her pain more than anyone else. The next day, Peter went to the hospital with Ruth. When they entered the room, Vanessa saw them and broke into tears. Time had changed her. The pride was gone, replaced with weakness and regret. "You left us," Peter said calmly. "You chose wealth over your family." Vanessa could not speak. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered, "Please forgive me." Her voice carried the weight of her mistakes. Ruth stood silently, her emotions overwhelming her. She wanted to speak, to shout, to release years of pain, but the words would not come. Instead, she turned and walked out again. Peter followed her. "I know you are hurting," he said gently. "But remember who you are. You are a doctor. Your duty is to save lives first, no matter what." Ruth stood still for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath and walked back into the room. She looked at her mother, not as the woman who abandoned her, but as a patient who needed help. "I will treat you," she said calmly. "I have forgiven you." Her words were simple, but powerful. Peter smiled and embraced her. "I am proud of you," he whispered. Vanessa received treatment and slowly recovered. She was grateful, humbled, and forever changed. But forgiveness did not mean restoration. She was not welcomed back into their home. Peter and Ruth moved forward with their lives, stronger than ever. They had faced pain, betrayal, and struggle, but they had also chosen strength, dignity, and forgiveness. Greed can blind the eyes and harden the heart. It can make a person walk away from love, only to realize too late what they have lost. Vanessa chased a life of luxury, but in the end, she lost everything that truly mattered. But Peter and Ruth proved something greater. That patience, hard work, and love can rebuild what was broken. And that true wealth is not found in money, but in character, sacrifice, and the courage to forgive.